I heyday as much as maybe $1 million a day, $2 million a day sometimes, maybe more.
Before there was Snowfall, before Franklin Saint ruled the streets of South Central on TV, there was a real man who built an empire larger than almost anyone could imagine. His name was Freeway Rick Ross, a man who went from a poor kid who couldn't even read to running a $1 billion cocaine empire. On this episode, we'll break down the true story of Rick Ross and compare it to the fictionalized world of Snowfall. You'll see how Franklin Saint's rise and fall mirrors the very real life of America's most notorious drug kingpin. Health Wealth Diary presents the real story behind Snowfall. Ricky Donald Ross was born on January 26, 1960, in Troop, Texas. When he was about 5 years old, his family moved to South Central Los Angeles. He and his older brother David grew up in poverty in a single-parent household. His father abandoned the family before Ricky was even born. Illiteracy was a big issue. He couldn't read during much of his early life. In 1965, Ricky witnessed his mother shoot and murder her brother in self-defense. This act of violence would change Ricky forever. He wanted nothing to do with the streets. In high school, he played tennis and had hopes for a scholarship. However, because of his inability to read, those academic challenges blocked him from getting the chance he needed. He eventually dropped out before graduating. He started with small hustles like mowing lawns and selling lemonade, then gradually moved into more illicit activities such as shoplifting and running errands for local gangbangers. In 1979, Ricky had his first encounter with cocaine. He and his friend bought a small quantity of the drug and began selling it. It sold quicker than Ricky expected. He then realized cocaine was his way out of the hood. Ricky was looking to expand his operation, but there was one problem. He needed a better connect. He began spending time with an upholstery teacher at a Los Angeles community college. Ricky told the teacher that he was selling cocaine and was interested to buy more. The teacher referred Ricky to his Nicaraguan connect, Ivan Argelis, who offered to keep him supplied. Ivan was able to provide more weight at a lower price, and Ricky quickly went from dealing in grams of cocaine to dealing in ounces. Ricky was moving on up. While Ricky was working with Ivan, a Nicaraguan exile and cocaine distributor named Danilo Blandón kept a close eye on Rick, and although he did not know him personally, he was very impressed with the amount of cocaine that Ricky was moving. After the attempted murder of Ivan Argelis, Blandón offered to supply cocaine to Ricky directly. Through his connection to Blandón, Ricky was able to purchase Nicaraguan cocaine at extremely reduced rates. Ricky began selling cocaine at $10,000 per key, a price well below average. He sold to everybody in LA, including the Bloods and Crips. By 1982, Ricky had received his moniker of Freeway Ricky and claimed to have sold up to $3 million worth of cocaine per day and purchased over 450 keys of cocaine a week. Now, if that sounds familiar, it should. In Snowfall, Franklin Saint begins with small hustles before meeting his first connect, Avi Drexler, an ex-Mossad agent who now runs his own syndicate. Through Avi, he meets the real connect, Teddy McDonald, the CIA agent who becomes his pipeline to unlimited cocaine. At 23, Ricky was already a millionaire. Around that same time, he was introduced to a new phenomenon, crack. When a local pimp-turned-hustler showed Ricky how to cook up cocaine with baking soda, the sky was the limit. Ricky formed a team called the Freeway Boys, with childhood friends Cornell Ward and Norman Tillman. It was only a matter of time before his business would expand to dozens of other cities in the United States, making him even wealthier. Ricky invested most of his money in real estate across Southern California, especially along Highway 110, also known as Harbor Freeway, which is also the reason for his nickname, Freeway Ricky. What set Ricky apart from other dealers was, he treated it like a business. He reinvested in real estate, kept a low profile, and ran his organization like a corporation. No flashy chains, he never wore jewelry. No foreign cars, he drove a beater. And no wild spending, just pure profit and expansion. In Snowfall, Franklin builds his empire in almost the same way, expanding fast, taking over territories, and thinking like a boss. His crew was also made of childhood friends like Leon Simmons and Kevin Hamilton. But where Franklin faces constant turf wars with rivals like Manboy and Scully, Ricky didn't need as much violence. His prices alone crushed the competition. Still, the show's drama reflects the tension that Ricky's rise created across South Central. When one man controls the flow, everyone else gets desperate. Ricky didn't just sell cocaine, he helped popularize crack. By cooking powder and packaging it into rock form, it became cheaper, faster, and far more addictive. Crack swept through black communities like wildfire. Ricky watched as his own friends, girlfriends, and neighbors became addicted. Families broke apart, crime rates spiked, and entire neighborhoods collapsed. The empire that made him rich was also destroying the world around him. Ricky always tried to avoid the public eye, but he couldn't avoid the spotlight for long. In 1985, the Los Angeles Police Department started to investigate Ricky, but they struggled to pin anything on him. So, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department teamed up with the Los Angeles Police Department to form the Freeway Ricky Task Force. In April 1987, members of the Freeway Ricky Task Force attempted to set Ricky up. Ricky had apparently escaped a police foot chase one evening. In retaliation, the officers decided to plant a key of cocaine in the trunk of his abandoned car, but the charges were later dismissed due to police misconduct. In the late 1980s, Ricky moved to Ohio to escape the heat in Los Angeles. The DEA seized a shipment of cocaine headed to Cincinnati that was directly linked to Ricky. This time, he couldn't avoid arrest. He was indicted in cases not only in Cincinnati, but also in Los Angeles and Texas. Prosecutors later estimated that between 1982 and 1989, Ricky had sold 3 tons of cocaine with gross earnings of $900 million. He pleaded guilty to drug trafficking charges and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. While serving his 10-year prison sentence, Ricky learned how to read. He also learned that the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department had set him up. In 1994, the FBI gave Ricky an opportunity of a lifetime. They gave Ricky an opportunity to testify against the same people that put him in prison, the LAPD. Ricky testified against the corrupt cops that planted drugs in his car years before. The government, in exchange, reduced Ricky's prison time, and he was freed less than 5 years into his original sentence. Ricky did it again. He beat the system. In the urban cities all throughout America, he became a folk hero. To the authorities, however, Ricky became a target. When Blandone brought cheap cocaine to Los Angeles, Rick Ross became his most important customer. Together, they created a pipeline that flooded Los Angeles with crack. Rick had the street smarts and network. Blandone had the product and the political protection. But this wasn't just business. It was also a friendship, or so Ricky thought. In Snowfall, Franklin Saint has his own supplier, Teddy McDonald, a CIA operative. Teddy gives Franklin access to limitless product, just like Blandone did for Ricky. In both real life and fiction, the supplier relationship is the key to the story. Without Blandone, Ricky never becomes the king of crack. Without Teddy, Franklin Saint never becomes the king of Los Angeles. After being released from prison, Ricky changed his life around. He really tried to stay away from the drug game, but that would not last long. He'd soon be set up by his former supplier and mentor, Danilo Blandone, who, unbeknownst to Ricky, had become a paid federal informant after narrowly avoiding a life sentence. Blandone told Ricky that the Colombians were on his back and that he desperately needed to move 100 keys of cocaine. Ricky was hesitant at first, until Blandone offered each key for $10,000. Ricky thought about it and agreed to do the deal with Blandone. On March 2, 1995, in a parking lot near San Diego, Ricky was caught in a DEA sting, trying to buy 100 keys from none other than Blandone, the same man who had built him up. In 1996, Ricky was sentenced to life in prison under the California Three Strikes law. It seemed his empire was gone for good, but prison didn't break him. Instead, Ricky learned the law. He read law books, and he filed his own appeals. He was on a mission to get himself out of prison. Oscar Danilo Blandone wasn't just a drug trafficker. He was a political operator working with the Contras, a rebel army fighting in Nicaragua's civil war. The Contras were backed by the CIA as part of the Cold War, and they needed money to fund their war against the Sandinista government. That's where the cocaine came in. Blandone funneled massive amounts of cocaine into Los Angeles. Rick Ross bought it cheap, cooked it into crack, and distributed it across the U.S. The profits? They flowed back to the Contras. In other words, a U.S.-backed foreign war was being financed by the crack epidemic in South Central Los Angeles. Wow! In 1996, investigative journalist Gary Webb published a groundbreaking series of articles called Dark Alliance. In it, Webb exposed the connections between the CIA, the Contras, and the crack epidemic. And Rick Ross's name was front and center. Webb's reporting revealed that Rick Ross wasn't just another kingpin. He was being used as the perfect street-level distributor for a government-funded operation. The story sent shockwaves across America, sparking outrage and suspicion that the CIA had deliberately fueled the crack crisis in black communities. The CIA denied it, and mainstream media attacked Webb. But years later, even official investigations confirmed pieces of his story. Webb paid the ultimate price, discredited, isolated, and later found dead in what was ruled a suicide. But his reporting ensured that the world never forgot how deep this conspiracy ran. In Snowfall, Teddy McDonald embodies the Contra scandal. He plays a rogue agent using Franklin's drug empire to fund the Contras in Nicaragua. The show makes it clear Franklin isn't really in control. He's just a pawn in a bigger game. And so was Rick Ross. That's what makes the fiction so chilling. It's rooted in real history. On the show Snowfall, Irene Abe, the investigative journalist, is the closest parallel to Gary Webb. Like Webb, she begins piecing together the truth about the CIA's involvement in the drug trade. She interviews victims, digs into Teddy McDonald, and threatens to expose the entire operation. Just as Gary Webb's career and life were destroyed after exposing Dark Alliance, Irene is eventually silenced, killed to protect the government's secret. Still in prison serving his life sentence, Ricky never gave up. While filing his own legal appeals, he found a loophole in his case. He figured out that his prior convictions in Texas and Ohio had originated from the same federal crime, so they should have counted for one strike rather than two. That would mean that he was on his second strike rather than his third, and that his sentence would have to be reduced. It turned out that Ricky was correct. His sentence was soon reduced to 20 years, and he ultimately ended up serving just 14. Ricky was officially released on September 29, 2009. When Ricky walked out of federal prison in 2009, the world he once ruled was gone. The empire he built on the streets of Los Angeles had crumbled. The billions in profits were long vanished, and the crack epidemic he helped fuel had left scars across generations. But unlike Franklin Saint in Snowfall, Ricky wasn't finished. His second life was just beginning. Ricky didn't return to crime. Instead, he dedicated himself to learning and growth. Ricky enrolled in college classes, studied business, and began networking with entrepreneurs and mentors. He wanted to take the same sharp mind that once ran one of America's largest drug empires and apply it to legal ventures. But freedom brought a new challenge: the rise of the rapper who had stolen his name. By 2009, the Miami rapper Rick Ross, real name William Leonard Roberts, was one of hip-hop's biggest stars. The real Rick Ross sued him, claiming identity theft and exploitation. The lawsuit dragged on for years, but the court sided with the rapper, ruling that the name had become part of pop culture. It was a bitter loss for the man who had lived the name first, but it also gave Freeway Rick Ross more visibility. Suddenly, younger generations wanted to know who the real Rick Ross was. Instead of sinking into bitterness, Ricky leaned into the spotlight. He wrote an autobiography, Freeway Rick Ross, the untold autobiography where he laid bare the truth about his rise and fall. The book became a cult classic, not only for true crime readers, but also for entrepreneurs fascinated by his street-level business genius. Ricky also became a sought-after motivational speaker. He traveled across the country, visiting schools, prisons, and community centers. He shared his story with young people, not to glorify it, but to warn them of the cost of chasing fast money. His message was clear: if it happened to me, it can happen to you. Ricky reinvented himself as a legitimate businessman. He started ventures in urban media, clothing lines, and even launched a cannabis brand. True to form, he applied the same marketing instincts and street smarts that once moved tons of cocaine to building a legal empire. Long before Snowfall hit TV screens, one man had a vision to tell the story of Los Angeles in the 1980s. The rise of crack, the destruction it left behind, and the forces that fueled it. That man was John Singleton, the legendary filmmaker who gave us Boys in the Hood and Baby Boy. John Singleton grew up in South Central Los Angeles. He didn't need to imagine what the crack epidemic did to his community. He lived it, he saw it, he survived it. By the time he became a successful director in Hollywood, he carried with him a mission: to one day tell the full story of how cocaine and crack reshaped America's inner cities. Singleton developed Snowfall in the mid-2010s with the idea of showing not just drug dealers, but the bigger picture: the CIA, the Contras, the media, and the young men who got caught in between. He wanted viewers to see how systemic forces collided with personal choices to create tragedy. Unlike other drug dramas, Snowfall wasn't about glamorizing the game. It was about showing how the game consumed everyone involved. Before Snowfall, John Singleton had actually worked with Ricky on telling his story. Singleton once considered making a film or series directly about Ricky's life. The project never fully materialized, but their conversations helped shape Singleton's vision of the crack era. When Snowfall premiered in 2017, Ricky quickly recognized pieces of his own history on screen. From the streets of South Central to the CIA pipeline, the show was, in many ways, a fictional remix of his biography. Tragically, John Singleton passed away in 2019 before Snowfall finished its run. But his vision lived on through the series. In Snowfall, Franklin Saint begins as a wide-eyed young man with ambition and hustle. He builds an empire, outsmarts rivals, and even manipulates the CIA's own agenda to his advantage. But in the end, all that power slips away. Betrayed, broken, and consumed by his demons, Franklin dies a slow death, not in the streets, but in spirit. He becomes a shadow of his former self, lost to alcohol and despair. For Franklin, there is no redemption. His story is a tragedy, a warning that the game doesn't love you back. But the real Rick Ross's ending was different. After surviving betrayal by Danilo Blandone, a life sentence, and a government system designed to bury him forever, Ricky walked out of prison a free man. He didn't return to drugs or the streets. Instead, he reinvented himself. Today, Freeway Rick Ross is no longer the king of crack. He's a father, a teacher, a businessman, and a storyteller. His life stands as one of the most unlikely redemption arcs in American history. The real Rick Ross didn't just survive the game. He rewrote his place in it. So, what do you think? Did Snowfall capture the truth of Rick Ross's life? And who is your favorite character from the show? And here's a bigger question. Do you think the CIA really knew crack was destroying communities and allowed it to happen anyway? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications for more new videos from the Health Wealth Diary.